I put in my application to join the Alaska Territorial Guard, and I was accepted on February 2nd, 1942. I served from 42 till December 46, the 22nd of December 46, through the Territorial Guard, the Alaskan Scouts, and then out. I can remember a few things that a lot of people don't know about. But when the Japanese bombed Dutch Harbor in the summer of 1942, it was a surprise to a lot of people here because they couldn't figure out where those airplanes that bombed Dutch Harbor came from. So we don't know yet today why they bombed Dutch Harbor and never came any farther. So they decided that they would go down and see what they could find out on the Aleutian chain. And they scouted it out and used the Territorial Guardsmen to scout it out and give them the information back, and they found out that there was some occupation of Japanese military on some of the islands, but they didn't know how many. So then in the fall of 42, the infantry went out with some ships to see if they could conquer those islands back that were occupied by the Japanese military. They went out there in the late fall of 42, and they sent soldiers out there that were brought up here, and they weren't dressed for the weather that they have down there. A lot of you people been down the Aleutian chain, you know, come September it starts getting pretty miserable and cold down in that area. So they went down, and they didn't lose any soldiers due to combat, but they lost, I think it was 526 military personnel at their first landing in that too, and they all suffered and died from exposure. So this is where Muktuk Marston and the Territorial Guard play a big role on how they should go after that. Marston wanted to bring the Guard down there, and they wouldn't let him because we were just all volunteers. So then they brought in a guy by the name of Kastner, Lieutenant Colonel Kastner. So he decided that he would choose his military men, and he wanted men that had gone through the Territorial Guard, and he would form the Alaskan Scouts. So that's where the Alaskan Scouts got formed. They went right into the military, and after he got his company put together, which was approximately 90 personnel, he handpicked his men and went out in late January he took one platoon of soldiers out of the Scouts with him as he went down. And when they landed in that too, they figured that's, after scouting out the islands, they found out there was only 2 islands that had Japanese being occupied by the Japanese military. That was Kiska and that too. So at Kiska, it was easy getting them off because they hadn't been too active there, so they were easy collecting that bunch, but the ones in that too were a little bit more dug in. So what they did is they moved up, and before they went out there, Marston had told them to be sure and get all the military clothed with the right kind of clothing for going down there in the middle of the winter. So they ordered all their skins, parkies, sealskin parkies, mukluks, waterproof mukluks, sealskin pants, and regular warm mittens made out of wolf and wolverine. You all know about it, you've all seen them. But that's what he ordered, and he got a skin sewing a company together there that was run by Sammy Moggs out of Nome, and they started putting out parkies and all the material to get them ready to go down with the military that was going to go down and flee and get the Japanese off at 2, which they did. They went down with all the gear they needed, and as they were coming up on the island of Attu, they had already taken care of Kiska, which was just a one-day operation because there wasn't too many there, and they all pulled and they came prisoners right away. But they felt Attu would be a lot tougher. So what they did was they decided that they would go scout it out. So they went ashore with six ex-people that came out of the Territorial Guard into the scouts and brought them ashore. Now I want to bring out a couple of things that you probably have never heard. And this all came firsthand because that's where I wound up, is in the scouts. So I know the 6 people that went ashore on that raft. And it was dark at night. They wanted to go in at dark and come back out at dark, but they wanted to make sure to find out how many Japanese was on Attu Island. So going in, the 6 scouts and 1 lieutenant from the infantry that was in charge of this operation off the ship had nothing to do with the scouts. But he felt he was in control, so they got halfway to shore in the middle of the night and it was pretty rough. They decided that somehow this lieutenant had screwed up. He started squirming around and he forgot the maps. So he says, we'll have to go back to the ship and get the maps. And these 6 scouts that he had on board said, no, we're going to keep going. So he pulled out his .45 and said, we're going back to the ship.